Happy Friday. Hope everyone's doing super well and staying warm. So welcome to yet another Adulting Joyfully session. And today we're going to be going live with Christina Luk. She is playing double roles right now. Like a lot of people, she is mom in chief to two little kids. One of them is 2 years old and the other one is just 3 months old. And she's also the founder and CEO of her own company, which is designed by Christina. So I'm just waiting for her to join. And yes. So I'm just waiting for Christina to join. But today's topic is a lot. Hi, Christina. How are you?
Hi.
Like
How are you?
I love your hair.
Children, because having a child is really a full-time job.
My mom did it. It's like
I didn't realize you stopped at all. Go back in time.
Yeah, that was
when,
only 2 days
you know, given
ago.
you've been such an
looks nice.
accomplished designer,
I know
and
how you
award-winning
found the
one
time
at it,
to
and
do
someone
it,
who
but it
loves
looks
their
really
job
nice.
and thrives in it.
No, my
How
mom
did
did
you
it in
decide
like a
to,
good 15 minutes.
you know, maybe
Ooh.
do it differently, walk
So
away
thank you
from
for
it,
joining us. I was
and
just
start
introducing yourself,
taking another journey.
introducing
A
you
couple
a
of
little
years
bit.
back when
And you know, you're an
accomplished
accomplished
interior
was born.
designer, have worked in some of the
Yeah.
best
So I had
interior
RN
design
in
firms and some
2018,
amazing
and I
hospitality
was still working
brands,
full-time
some of the
for this
biggest ones
company
right now, and
who
some
is
award-winning
incredible,
work.
and they do like
And
beautiful
then you
work.
decided to quit
But
it
that
a
comes
couple of
with
years
like a
back.
lot of, you know, intense
And
hours
when you
and
became a
rigor
mom,
to work with the team. Yes,
right?
pretty much.
And
I think back
the
then,
topic
when
today,
when
Christina,
I was
is
going to
for
have a
moms,
baby, my
working
husband and I
moms
talked
especially.
endlessly of what that means in
Can
terms of like
you have it
childcare,
all?
what I wanted to do,
And it's a very
how I
relevant
felt about
topic
my
because, you know,
identity
everything that we're reading in the
and
news
my
right now
career as well, because
is
it was
not
important
as
for me. I knew that
supportive, or
I
it does
should
not seem
continue
as
doing something I love
optimistic for
doing. It
working
wasn't just
moms.
a job
You know,
for
there are
me.
more working moms who've left the
But
workforce.
obviously, being
They're
a
saying, you know,
parent, there's other
80% of the
factors that
people
come
who've
into
left the
play of
workforce
like
since
what kind of
COVID
mom I wanted to be.
are women.
And I think
And the
after
number of
being
women in the
who I was
workforce
for
is the
30
lowest
years
it's ever
plus,
been
like,
since
and then having a
1988.
child, like
So I
it
would,
was really hard for
given
me
that
to
you're a
like get
working
in
mom,
terms
you're
with
perfect. Would love to have
who
you
I
on.
was before and who I was becoming.
So
No,
Christina,
so I wasn't
real
sure
problem,
like
I think,
what that
and
entailed until I really
even
fell
before
into
COVID,
it
I
and had the
struggled with
baby,
it
and
a
then I was
lot
like,
about
wow,
having it all and
this
what
is
it
very
means to
different.
have it
Even
all,
though I
and
anticipated all these
it
things,
often
I talked with
translated
a
to
lot
like
of
doing it
moms,
all
and I
perfectly as
try to
well.
set like certain
And I
things in
think
place.
COVID really
Like it
amplified what
wasn't
the issues
as
were with
simple.
that phrase of what all
So
And
tell
that's
us a
how I
little bit,
like
Christina,
for
sorry,
me, it was
about
never
what
questioned that I wanted
challenges
to
is
be
it?
a mom.
Yes, I mean,
because I grew up
I
really
hear you,
close
right?
to
You have an
mother-in-law.
identity,
Yeah.
you think this is who
And I
you
knew
are,
from her,
and
like I
you know,
wanted
this
to
is
be
what
the
you
same
want
kind
in
of
life, and
like
all of a
parent to my
sudden,
children as well.
I don't have a
But
cat
it is
kid, so I can't
difficult to have
identify,
that
but I
sort of
can only
like,
imagine. So tell us
you
a little
know,
bit about what that
balance of
struggle
like
was.
your work life and
I think
your
it was a
children
lot
as
of
well,
like
because having a
self-doubt.
child is
It was
really
a
a
lot of
full-time
questioning
job.
of who I was and who I
So then
was
how did you,
becoming
so
and how people
go back
perceived
in
me from
time
the
when,
outside.
you know, given you've been such an
Back in the
accomplished
day
designer and
before
an
children,
award-winning
like
one
my
at
husband
it,
are
and
very
someone who
social. We went
loves
out all
their
the
job and
time, and
thrives in
we
it,
had a very
how
different
did you
lifestyle than
decide
what we
to,
do now, where we sleep
you know,
at
maybe
9:30 if we can.
do it differently, walk away from it,
And then
and,
as
you
like
know,
someone
start taking
with
another journey a couple of
a lot
years
of
back
ambitions in a
when
career, like
Aaron
I
was born?
definitely believe in hard work.
So I
And
had
you
RN
know, like to
in
pay your dues, you get something
2018,
good out of it.
and I was still working
And
full
being
time
creative,
for this
like you're
company who
always
is
incredible.
there's no
and
end
they
to
do
it.
like
You can
beautiful
go as
work,
long as you want,
but
to
that
like dream
comes
of
with
something
like a
with
lot of
a
intense
client or with
hours
your
and
team.
rigor.
So I
to
think
work
that
with
was
the team.
really challenging.
And I think back
To
then,
overcome.
when I was gonna have a baby, my husband and I talked who I was,
what that means,
and who I
like
wanted to
childcare,
become more of,
what I wanted to do,
So
how
how
I
did
felt
you
about my
navigate that?
identity, and a
my
lot of
career as well,
conversations.
because it was
And
important
trial
for
and
me. I
error.
knew that I should
A
continue
lot of
doing
trial
something I
and
love doing,
and
and
I
I
was
was
just a
pregnant
job
as well during
Oh,
COVID.
obviously being
So
a parent,
it
there's
was
other
a lot,
factors that come
and
into play of like
it
what
wasn't
kind of mom
possible
I
to
wanted to
outsource
be.
anything like we
And I think
previously would
after
have done.
being who I was for
Because we
30
didn't feel
years
comfortable with
plus,
anyone
like,
coming to our home,
and then having a child,
you know,
like
we didn't have family,
it was
like,
really
around
hard
the
for me
area
to
that
like
could
get
just
in
stop by
terms
and help
with
us.
correct.
who
So that
I
was a
was
huge
before
struggle, and I
and who I
think
was becoming.
during that course
Wow.
of time,
So I
like,
wasn't sure
I used to be
like,
really strict
what that
with
entailed
myself.
until I really fell into it and had
Like,
the baby,
no
and then I was
screen
like, wow,
time.
this is
You
very
have to eat,
different.
like,
Even though I
organic,
anticipated
or
all these
that's
things, I
home
talked
cooked
with a lot of
meals.
the moms, and
No
try to set
takeout.
like certain things in place. Like it
Also,
wasn't
like
as
in terms of
simple.
the house cleanliness, I was really,
So
really
tell us a
adamant
little bit,
about things being
Christina,
certain way.
sorry,
Like the
about what
towels had to be
challenges
perfectly
is it?
aligned.
Of
Yes,
course,
I mean,
you're the
that
designer.
is
Here
the
you
right
have to have
angle.
an identity.
Yeah.
You think
Like
this is who
crazy
you
things
are,
like that.
and
In
you know this
hindsight
is what
now,
you
I'm
want
like,
in life, and
okay,
all of a sudden,
never mind. let it
I
go.
don't have a
So there were some
kid, so I can't
trade-offs with
identify,
how
but I can
I
only imagine. So
thought
tell
I
us a little bit
was
about
and
what
how
that struggle
I
was.
felt comfortable being who I was.
I think it was a lot of like self-doubt.
And what I had
There was
to
a lot
like
of
adapt
questioning
to
of
just
who
so that we
I
could
was
feel like
and
we
who
had a
I
peace of
was
mind and
becoming
not
and how people
really
perceived
stress
about the
from
little things
outside.
that in the grand scheme of things,
Back
it's
in the
not-
day
not
before
that
children,
big of
my
a
husband are
deal.
very social.
No,
We
it
went out all the
doesn't.
time, and
But
we
so,
had a very
Christina,
different
like when
lifestyle
you
than
were
what we
taking
do
care of
now,
the
where we sleep
kids,
at
right?
9:30 if we
Yeah.
can.
But also managing your business.
And then
How
as
did you
like
balance
someone
the
with
cooking and the cleaning up?
a
Or were
lot
there
of
times where you
ambitions
were
in a
like, you know what?
career, like
I
I
can't do it all.
definitely
Or you know
believe
what?
in hard work,
maybe
and
something has to
you know,
give,
like to
and
pay
let me
your
figure out
dues, you get
what that
something
is
good
that
out of
has to
it.
give.
And being creative, like
there
you're
were definitely
always
many
there's no
moments
end
and
to
still
it.
are.
You can go as
I'm a
long
work
as
in
you want
progress.
to,
I don't
like,
have the
dream of
answers to
something
everything
with
right now.
a
But
client or with your team. And so
I
I
think
think
I
that
learned
was
to ask
really
for help
challenging
and
talk to my partner a lot
to
about
overcome.
what I needed.
And yeah, it caused a
and
lot of
split the
self-doubt on like who I
responsibility
was.
that way. And thank
and
God
who
he's
I
like
wanted
very
to become
hands-on,
more
and
of.
he's a very loving father.
So how did you
And
navigate
he's
that?
very systematic. I know, he's
a lot of
very
conversations
systematic.
and
So
trial
like
and
we would
error.
cook bigger meals ahead
A
of
lot of trial
because
and error, and I
for
think partly
when I
that's
had
why
like
I
a
started
meeting
my
or
own
a
thing,
deadline, my
only
husband
because
would
I
be
felt
taking comfortable and
kids.
and then
Experience
when
enough
I had
to do
when he
my
had a
own
deadline,
thing,
I would be
but
doing
also
the
I
same for
wanted
him.
that
So we
flexibility
would have
of
like a
being
little bit
able
of peace
to
to do our work.
investigate how it's like to
But
be
it
a
definitely
mom
was
in a
a
different
struggle,
way.
and it's because
Still
I tried it
is.
with a full-time job, and
But you know,
it didn't
we're
feel like
making
it
it work.
fit completely of how I wanted
And
to
thank God
do
my
things.
mom
And
is
so
here
I was
now
like, okay, if I
to
know
help
what I'm
out.
doing,
That's
she flew in from
I
Malaysia after
to
my
figure it out,
second
and I
son
can
was
still
born
provide
in
for my
November
family.
last
Like,
year.
why not?
And
Like, try
it's
it.
been a lot easier.
That's amazing.
But
So
definitely
okay,
it took a
let's
toll on
fast forward
us
a
when
little
it's
bit into
just
COVID
the two
times,
of us
right?
doing
Where
it.
so question for you over there,
all
given
kinds of
that
roles,
so much of the
from
day
the
is
cook
just
to the
running
cleaner,
around, right? Just kind
to
of
the
keeping
laundry
some balls
person,
in the
to
air
the
and
You're
getting
looking
some
at her.
fun.
Yep.
Does it take a toll on the relationship, and does it take a toll on yourself? And how do you
Well,
navigate
at
that?
first, I was
It
the one
definitely
managing
does take a toll on
most
the
of it,
relationship.
just because, like,
I didn't
from
think
a
it would
financial
in the first
standpoint,
place
it
because
made
we're pretty
sense to have my
communicative
husband,
about what
have
we
his
need and what
full-time
we
job,
want
which is
and how
really,
we can
really
do it
taxing.
together.
And
But
me
I
trying
think
to
like
start
the
the own
constant
business
grind of
and
the
have
same
that
thing.
struggle.
It was like
with,
Groundhog
not
Day
every
really having the
day,
same
right?
support as a full-time job does.
It definitely
It
did
just
take a
made sense
toll,
for
but
us
I
to,
think
we
you know,
learned
split
to
it up
be
in
more
that way where
patient
I
with
really
each
took
other
care of
over
the
the course of
household
time.
our end.
And just
And I was
not be as
pregnant
picky about certain things that
during
don't
COVID.
matter. Like
Wow.
for me,
So
it was a lot.
not
and,
putting the dishwasher
it wasn't possible to
exactly
outsource
properly.
anything like we previously
It's
would have
okay
done.
as long as he's doing
because
it
we didn't feel
right.
comfortable with anyone coming to our home, and you know, we have
Letting go
family
of
like
the
around the
perfection
area
just
who
a
could just
tad
help
bit.
Yeah,
help us.
just a little bit.
So that
and
was
it's
a
okay,
huge
you know, it
struggle,
doesn't
and I
hurt
think
anybody.
during that course of time,
And then
like,
for myself,
I
I used to be
think
really
it's
strict with my
it's just being a
son.
little bit kinder to myself,
Like
whether
no
it's like
screen
setting out a little bit
time.
of time, so
You
I
have to
have a
eat
moment
like
to breathe,
organic,
or
remembering
that
to
home
breathe.
cooked meals,
Yes, that's
And
a
like
goal.
let my
take
mind
out.
The food still needs to be
Um,
cooked. Aaron is
Also,
still
like
wanting your
in terms of like
attention.
house
Something else
cleanliness,
still
I
needs
was
to
really,
happen.
really like
How do
adamant
you
about things being
prioritize?
certain
How
way.
do you
Like the
manage that
towels
time?
had to be perfectly aligned.
Of course,
The
you're the
bath bed is
designer.
right
like
angle.
day to day.
Like crazy
I
things
think
like that.
I
In
often
hindsight, now I'm like, okay,
have to like
never
reassess
mind,
and
let it
assess
go.
what is needed.
So there were
at
some
most
trade-offs
that
with
moment.
how I
And often
thought
Aaron
I
seems
was
to
take
how I
presidency
felt
because
comfortable
he
being who
screams
I
a lot.
was.
He's in his terrible twos right
And
now.
what I had to like adapt to just so that we
But
could
I think
feel
like
we had a
communicating with
mind
my
and not
partner or like
my
really stress
mom,
about the little things.
just
that
asking for
in
help
the
in that
grand
sense
scheme
really
of things is
helps a
not
lot, like in terms
that
of
big of a
prioritization.
deal.
No, it does.
So everything
But
can be
so,
done at once, but
Christina,
when
like when you
that
were
isn't
taking care of the
available to
kids,
you, I
right?
think it's more about
Were
just
also managing
stopping
your
for a moment
business.
and
How did
rethinking
you
and like,
balance the
you know,
cooking and the
just
cleaning
take
up?
one
Or
thing
were
at
there
a time
times where you were
rather than
like, you
trying
know
to
what?
juggle
I
everything
can't
at
do it
once
all.
because
Or
it's not
you know what?
possible. And
Maybe
I think
something
you
has
lose
to
out
give,
on the
and let me
joy of
figure out
like doing
what
these
that is
small
that has
things
to
for your
give.
family when
No, there were definitely
constantly
many
trying to do
moments, and
everything
still
at
are
once. Like,
many
it
moments.
loses
I'm a
its
work in
purpose
progress. I don't have
and
the
the joy
answers to
of it.
everything right now.
So beautiful.
But
Like, how do
I
you
think I
find the
learned to
joy
ask for
even when
help
you're
and talk to my partner a lot
so
about
stretched? If you can
what
just
I
be in the
needed,
moment and enjoy that one
and
moment,
split the
somehow
responsibility
the
that way.
joy
And
will come
thank God
back,
he's
and
like
it will not
very
feel like a
hands-on, and
grind.
he's a very loving
So,
father.
Christina, can you share
And
times where you
like
have to
systematic.
struggle and
I
make these
know he's
decisions?
very,
Tight
very
deadline.
systematic. So like we
Maybe
would
cook, maybe Aaron,
bigger your meals ahead of time and eat that, as
And is there
opposed to
any
like
guilt
everything
in
fresh.
making the choice that you do?
I would split up the
So this
chores,
actually
but also
happened
like
like
maybe
not 2 weeks ago. I
freak
had a
out about
deadline,
having
it was
dirty dishes
snowstorm in the sink at times.
and I knew I needed
and
like
just
2 hours to
juggling
get it
really
done.
because
But of
for
course, like
when I had
being
like a
me, I was
meeting
like,
or a
okay, maybe I
deadline,
just
my
need 10
husband
more
would be
minutes,
taking
5 more minutes,
but
like
you know, it just stretched on and on.
when I
And
had,
when he had a deadline, I would be doing
hour
the
that I
same
would
for
take
him.
him
So
to play
we
with
would have
snow,
like a little bit of
because
peace
he's never
to do
played
our
in snow
work.
Wow.
before.
And
But
my
it
mom
definitely
was there to
a
witness
struggle,
this.
and it still is.
half an hour into
making it
like me
work.
delaying the process of
And
playing
thank God
with
my
my
son
mom is here
my
now.
mom
Messages me
to
from
help us.
downstairs.
She
She flew in from
"You promised
Malaysia
after
after
my
go.
second son was born in
And
November last
I
year.
was really
And
upset at
it's
that
been a
moment,
lot
and I felt guilt
easier,
because I was like, I really have
but
to get this
definitely
done.
it
It
took
took
a
10
toll
more
on
minutes.
us when
10
it's
more
just
minutes never
the
exists.
two of us
It's more
doing
than
it.
that.
So, question for
But
you
I
over
also
there.
felt guilty.
You know,
Like,
given that
I
so much
wanted
of
to
the
do
day is
this on
just
my own
running around, right?
because,
Just
you
kind
know,
of
I
keeping
wanted to be a
some balls
mother.
in the air and
So
letting some
let me
fall.
just close my
Yep.
computer.
Does it take a
Go play
toll
with that,
on
like
the
trying to plan
relationship,
ahead
and does it
if I
take a
can.
toll on yourself, and how would you
Knowing that
navigate
I
that?
have a deadline and just setting
It definitely
some things
does
in
take a
place,
toll on
like
the relationship.
telling my husband, hey, we should
I
order
didn't think
food
it
by
would
this
at
time
the first place because
I'm
we're
pretty
pretty not
communicative
to get
about
to it,
what
the
we
cooking
need and what we want,
or
and how we can
you
do
know
it
having
together.
my husband take my
But
son.
I think like the
Sons
constant grind
now.
of the same thing.
Um,
It was like
so that I don't
Groundhog Day
have to, like,
every day, right?
stress about that too much.
It does.
Like,
I think it all
definitely
goes
did
back
take
to
a toll,
asking
but
for
I
help and
think
being
we've learned to
communicative
be more
and
patient with
you know
each other
just
over the
just
course of
feeling
time.
like and just
Not be as picky about
taking care of
certain
your
things
mind.
that
I think that's
don't matter.
really
Like for
important in
me,
this whole process because
not putting the
you know, like,
dishwasher
you
exactly
can't do everything all at
properly.
once, and it's okay
It's
to let
okay
go
as
a
long
little
as he's
bit.
doing
Yeah.
it right.
But just focus on the work and the deadline you have
Letting go
with him.
of the perfection
And
just
if
a
you
tad
can,
bit.
hop back in
Just a
in
little
a few
bit, and
hours
it's
when the kids
okay.
are
You know,
asleep,
it doesn't
which is
hurt
what I find
anybody.
myself doing a lot. And then for
No, it's
myself,
really, I
think
mean,
it's
it's amazing what
it's
you
just
said,
being a
right?
little
If you
bit
can just
kinder
take
to
care of your
myself,
mind,
whether
everything
it's
else
setting
starts
out a
falling.
little bit of time
It's
so
still
I
tough,
have a
but at
moment
least
to
one
breathe,
less thing, right? Because the
remembering
mind
to
can
breathe,
can make a situation
Yes,
far more
let
and like
complex.
let my
So
mind
big plug for
rest a little
meditation in
bit.
here, people. You know how much
I take
it
showers,
matters to
longer
me.
showers than usual, so
There's actually a great question
I
that
can have a little bit more
Jivi is
peace. I
asking,
turn on
and
the
she's
water.
asking,
Sometimes I'm just standing
how do
there,
you make yourself available to
letting the
other
sound
people
drown
when
out
you
by
don't have that
the
much time for
water.
yourself?
It's my white noise. That's a really good question, and I think I'm still
That
trying
sometimes
to
you
figure
have
that
to
out.
hide in the shower to just get
Yeah,
time.
I
Moms,
think a
that
lot
might
of
be
it
one
is like
way. Just
a lot
hide
of
in the shower, put the
self-sacrifice
shower
for
on.
your own time.
Yeah.
But also really
Lock the door as
making
well
use of
because
the
your
time
kids are
that
going to
you do
run
have.
in.
If you have 5 minutes of the day, really take that 5
You know
minutes
what?
for
Also, I
yourself
think,
and
Christina, what you're
pamper
saying is
yourself,
so
whatever
important
makes
in
you feel
terms of
better.
just letting
I think
go.
that
Right?
is
There's
better
so
than
much that
saying
we
like, okay, you have an
think
hour
that
to
life has
yourself, and you
to
end up
go a
like
certain way,
not really
everything has to
spending
be in
it in a
order.
way that
And there are
is
times where it won't
you know,
be, and
impactful
being
to who
okay
you
with
are
that.
and your mind. Yeah.
And
So
I
I
love
think
what you
like
said about asking for
parsing that out
help.
is really
You know, a lot
important.
of times we think of
Just so
asking
that
for
you
help
know
as a
you need your
weakness.
me time
How,
as
you
well.
know, did you have that mindset
How
besides
did
the
you
shower, Christina,
flip
where
that
you get
around,
it? Or were you had no
because
choice? Tell you
walks. I had no choice, I think.
Yeah, I used to walk
I'm
a lot
actually
with
very
my
used to
my
like just
firstborn.
taking on as much as I can.
Like
during
doing it
COVID, we'll just like
myself
walk
if I-
around the perimeter
if it's
in
possible
circles
for the most part,
because
I'm
we were
pretty
afraid to like
resilient
go
that
into
way,
parks
but
and anything over the course of time.
but
Like,
that
I
helped
realized,
clear my
like,
mind
you
up a
need-
lot because
really
there's
a
something
village
like
of people to
very
help
like
you in any
meditative through the whole
circumstance
process
really
of
of just walking
and what that village looks
aimlessly
like.
in some ways,
For
but
me,
then
at
at the
least,
same time just like
I'm very fortunate to
breathing
have
and
my
like getting some
mom and
fresh
my dad
air.
come over.
I think that was really
to help
important.
out.
But I do
These days
realize
with the
like
snow, it's
you
a
know
little bit
that's a
tougher.
privilege
So
to have.
I have
Gone to terms with just
but
locking
yeah, like
myself in
asking
the
for help is
bathroom for
super
the extra
important.
5 minutes.
So how, like, this is another big one,
That's where
right?
you get
As
your
women,
5
we
minutes.
think, oh, if we
You know, it's
ask
also
for help, or if
beautiful.
we ask somebody
Something
to
that
do
you
something,
said
in
is
some ways we have failed. Walking around aimlessly. Just remember that we need to ask for help, and it's not I've been working in sometimes, you know what? A long time. That's what you need. Everything has so much structure to not a sign of weakness at all. And when I quit, I remember reading this telling myself, I was not going to structure my day. I'm just going to let the mind be. Some of the best wisdom comes from and let it unwind a little bit. And literally, there's you know, it becomes the most creative when you kind of just let it unwind. I'm going to ask you a controversial question. The hair, you know,
Yes, I
Sheryl
have that
Sandberg
book
has been
too.
all about leaning in. You lean into every aspect of your life, and you can be the supermom, and you can be whatever you want to be. I think one of the things he says is, I asked. I did
What's your
today,
point of view on
which is
that?
one of the bravest things to do.
I
I
think
asked for help.
it goes
And
back
really,
to
it
like
does take a brave
what it
soul
means
to
to
ask
have
for
it all,
help.
right? Like,
It's
I
not a
think,
sign
like,
of
each
weakness, but a
person is
sign
very
of
different,
like,
and
you know what?
recognizing
I'm
and, like,
willing to let
thinking
you
about
into
what
my
that means
life,
to
which is
you,
amazing.
is
So Christina,
essential
tell me,
to how
I mean, when you have a
feel
deadline,
at the end of the day,
right?
and it's
And
constantly
we have a lot
shifting
of
and
those,
evolving.
right?
And to me,
And
right
the
now,
food
it's
still
like
needs
it
to be
doesn't mean
cooked.
perfection.
Arden
It
is
doesn't
still
mean the
wanting your
traditional sense
attention.
of
Something
perfection
else
where you
still
have the
needs to
spotless
happen.
home, you're
How do you
constantly smiling
prioritize?
when
How do
your
you manage
kids are
that time?
wrecking havoc.
It's very hard.
Or
And
you're
I
like
think it
always
changes from
patient
day
with
to
like
day.
your spouse who
I think
wants something and you want something,
have
that,
to like
I think
reassess and
all
assess
about
what
acknowledging
is
who you
needed
are,
at
how you
most
feel
at
at that moment,
and constantly
and
trying to
often
fill their
Aaron
cup
seems
in
to
different
take
ways.
precedence because
Um,
he screams a
and
lot.
really
He's in his
looking
terrible
at
twos right now.
being kind to yourself.
But I
Instead
think
of
like
thinking, like, you have to
communicating
be
with
able
my
to do
partner
it
or
all
like
at
my
that
mom,
very given time,
just
and
asking
space.
for help in that sense,
And just being
really
thankful
helps
for
a lot, like in terms of
being able to
prioritization.
be happy and like present
So
and
everything
healthy,
can be done at once,
and know
but
that
when
your kids are going to
that
grow
isn't
up really
available
fast.
to you,
So
I think it's more about just if they're screaming at
Christina, and she can take some
and,
questions.
just take one thing
In
at
the
a time
meanwhile,
rather than trying to
Christina,
juggle
do you
everything
feel
at
like
once, because it's not possible. And I think you lose
there
out
have
on the
been
joy of
aspects in
doing
your
these small
career that
things
you've
for
had
your
to let
family
go
when
of a little bit, or
you're
take a
just
little bit of a
constantly
back
trying to do
foot,
everything at once. Like, it loses its purpose
because of the
and
situation?
the
It's
joy
of course a
it.
choice that you've made, but
So
you've had to kind
beautiful.
of pull back. Like,
A
how
little
do you
bit.
find the joy even when you're
Definitely, I think
so
I struggled
stretched?
with
If you can
this
just
a
be in the
lot in
moment and
very
enjoy that
beginning
one
when
moment,
starting my own company,
somehow
of
the
what
joy
kind
will
of
come
work I
back
want
and
to
it will
do,
not feel
and
like a grind.
figuring that
So,
part out, because I'm so
Christina, can you
used to doing
share
like
times
large
where you've had to
hotels that are
struggle and make
concerned
those decisions?
caliber
Tight
brands.
deadline,
And then
maybe
doing your own
cook,
thing,
maybe
of course, is a
iron,
struggle
and
of like not having that same support or
is
like
there any guilt
access
in
to
making
those
the
sort
choice
of
that you do?
projects.
Yeah.
But also
So
knowing
this actually
that,
happened,
like,
like,
those
maybe
kind of
2
projects
weeks ago. I
require
had
a
a
certain
deadline,
type
it
of
was
snowstorm.
dedication.
And
I
so
knew
for
I
me,
needed like
like,
2 hours to get
I
it done.
definitely felt
But
like
of
I was
course, like
scaling back
being
in
me,
terms
I
of
was
like
like,
the
okay, maybe I
type of
just
work
need
I
10
was
more
doing
minutes,
and
5 more
the
minutes.
achievements
You
that
know,
I
it just
would be
stretched
getting.
on and on.
So instead of like
And then
winning
in
an
the morning,
award
I had
for a big
promised
project,
Aaron that I
it's
would
more
take him
about like,
to play
hey,
in
I
the snow.
accomplished, just because he's never played
A
in
to
snow
Z.
before. And my mom
kind
was
of
there to
capacity
witness
to
the
do
day
so.
versus like something that was
Half an
different
hour
and more
into
shiny
like me
before.
delaying the
Right.
process of playing with my
So
son,
that
my
I think
mom messages
has
me
and
from
was a
downstairs and she's
struggle,
like,
especially
"You
in the
promised
beginning, but
him,
now
you
I
better
feel more
go."
comfortable with it because
And I was really
it's
upset
through
at that
design,
moment.
like I'm
I
able
felt
to
guilt
like touch
because
on
I was like,
people's
I
lives
really
in a
have to
more
get to
smaller
just
scale,
10
more
more
intimate
minutes. 10
scale,
more minutes
which
never
I love to
exists.
do.
It's more than that.
And I didn't realize that before.
But I
like,
also
that
felt guilty,
change.
like I wanted
But
to
I feel
do
like I'm
this on my
constantly
own
evolving and
because,
like
you
just
know, I wanted to be a
figuring out
mother.
like what
So
that means in terms
let
of
me
kind of
just close my
business.
It's
computer
great.
and
What
go play with
satisfies
them
me.
and see
There's
what
been a lot of
happens.
talk
So
about,
it was an
we talked about
amazing
how
experience
gender
because
roles
it was
might
just like
have,
that
come
small
to an
action of just
equilibrium.
like taking him
But
out
what
playing in the
COVID has
snow,
brought to the
having
fore
him
is
like,
not
you know,
so
run
much.
around and
What
build a
has your
snowman for
experience
the
been? And
first
I know
time,
Sukhan's
throwing
been
like
an
snowballs around
amazingly
and laughing
supporting
so hard.
dad and
It just
husband.
made me
But do you
so
feel like
happy.
it's
And
still the woman
you
who
know,
has
it
to
was only
take on
15
more
minutes. That's all
of
it took. And it made a
the
huge difference to
family,
how he
home,
was in terms of mood
caretaking
because he was
role?
cranky before
And,
that.
any
And
thoughts and
then
advice for
how I
people
felt
who are
about
still
myself
struggling with that?
and also my work. I could concentrate more.
I think like a lot
So I think
of
being present in the
people
very
fall into
moment
that
of whatever you are
mindset
doing,
that the
and
women
setting
take
time
care of the
aside to
household
do
and
those
the
different
children
things,
just because we're more maternal.
it's so important. And you know,
biologically,
it fills
and
your cup up.
and
At the end of
in
the
some
day.
ways I agree with
It makes
that,
you
just because
better
like,
as a
my
worker
role
or
and
as a mother.
my personality is
Those
very
are important
different
from
things.
Sukhan's personality.
Beautiful. Christian,
So
what
in
happens
our
when at
household,
times
it
you
kind of made
can't
sense
choose
more
the
of,
family,
but I
but you have to
definitely
choose the
think
job
that
because it is a pressing
the
deadline?
modern world doesn't
Maybe
really
somebody,
lend itself for
in
a
your case,
woman,
not the
a
boss,
woman
but a
to
boss
just
is
be
calling
that.
you, or something
And
is kind of falling
expectations
apart and
made
it needs your
feel like you
100%
can't
attention.
just be that and be
How do you
happy.
then?
I think that's the
It's tough to
challenge
say
with
no
a
to
lot
a
of
2-year-old kid who really
how
wants to
I'm
go out and play in
navigating
the
through
snow,
that is
or that
thinking
it's
about
already 8
success in a
o'clock and you
different
haven't
way.
started dinner as yet. Like
And
how have you managed
not
that?
feeling like I can't act
struggle.
for
The
help
struggle
in
is
other
real.
ways in terms of like taking care of the household things. Because at the end of the day,
I think
it's
it's more
partnership,
about
right?
like
Like
trying
it's not
to that
plan ahead.
because
If
I'm a woman,
can,
I have to do these things.
knowing
Like
that
he can
I
do
have
it
a
too,
deadline
and
just
he's
setting
willing to do it,
some
but
things
he
in
wouldn't
place,
know
like
to
telling
do
my
it
husband,
unless I
hey,
said,
we should
hey,
order food
like,
by this time because
You might
might
do and
not
what you
be
might
able
want.
to get to it, the cooking.
Where does the give and
Or
take over
you
there?
know, having my husband take my son or sons
that's a
now,
very good question. I think
so that
really
I don't
hard.
have to like
You can try and set boundaries
stress
ahead
about
of
that too
time.
much. And, like,
I
and let
think
them
it
know
all
what
goes
you
back to
want
asking for help
in
and being
place.
communicative.
My
and,
previous
just-
nanny actually
just
fed my
feeling
son
like
McDonald's, which is like a big no-no in my
taking care of your
household.
mind. I think that's really important.
But
in
it took a
this whole
conversation
process
just
to tell her,
because,
like, hey, like,
you know, like
don't do that.
you
But
can't
I
do
wouldn't have
everything all at
known
once,
that that was
and
a
it's okay
possibility
to
of
let
something
go a little
happening.
bit.
Yeah.
But just
Otherwise,
focus
so I think
on
like setting
the work and the
boundaries,
deadline you have now,
expectations,
if you can. And also like
and if you
curbing your
can't,
own
maybe clock back
expectations
in
too, and
in
being
a
a few hours when
little
the kids
bit.
are asleep, which is what I
If
find
something
myself
like that
doing a
happens
lot
and
of.
not freak
Yeah.
out about it.
No, it's really,
Know that
it's
everything,
amazing what you said,
can be
right? If you
resolved
can
at
just
the
take
end
care
of
of
the
your
day.
mind,
Everything
beautiful
else starts
It's
falling
very
in.
well
And
said.
it's still tough.
So, but at least one less thing, thinking nuggets of mind, Christina, that you've
can
shared,
make a situation
far more complex.
like, I think
so
even
big
me
plug
not
for
being a
meditation in
parent
here, people.
takeaway,
You know
right?
how much I letting go of perfection of exactly what it's meant to be.
There's actually
being
a
kind
great
to ourselves,
question
living in
that
the moment. And I
Divi
think
is
I love this
asking,
thing
and
of
she's
seamlessly
asking,
just
how do you make
walking
yourself
around
available to
and
other
the big
people
one
when you
is
don't
the
have that
courage
much
to
time
ask
for
for
yourself?
help. So I think a lot of
That's a
amazing,
really good
amazing
question,
nuggets.
and I think
And
I'm still
also
trying to
realize
figure
for
that
those
out
of
a
us
lot.
who are parents, you're not alone. I think a lot of people are struggling
a lot of
to kind of find the
self-sacrifice
balance,
in your own
find time for
time.
themselves.
But
So just
also
know that,
really
if you can just reach out to
making use of
somebody
the
else, you will
time that you
realize
do
it's not
have.
your
If you
unique
have 5 minutes
situation.
of the
And,
day,
there
really
might be
take that
tips and
5
other
minutes for
people who might be
yourself,
willing to
and pamper
help.
yourself, whatever it
Um,
makes you feel better.
have moms on
I
the
think
hotline call
than saying, like, okay, you have an hour
to ask,
and then you
like,
end up
hey,
like
I just need
not
5
really
minutes to talk.
spending it
Am I
in a way
crazy?
that
Or
is,
like, what should I do? And they
you know,
always tell you,
impactful
like,
to
it's
who
okay,
you are
be kind
and
to
your
yourself. That's
mind.
the advice I keep
So I
getting.
think
So
like
It's
I want to share that with
that's
everyone,
really
that
important.
it'll be okay.
Just so that
You're doing your
you
best.
need your me time as well.
So yes,
So
besides the
what's the
shower,
topic,
Christina, where do you get
the
your
topic
time? Is not just
Because I
parenting, it's selling,
walks.
is working walks, can you have it, is the
Yeah, I used to
career,
walk
and
a lot
second
with
is
my
parenting. And when you
firstborn.
put them both together,
Like during
it
COVID, we
becomes
would just
another
like walk
challenge
around the
altogether.
perimeter in circles
So much. It was
because
so
we were
much fun
afraid to
having
like
this
go into parks
conversation.
or anything else.
No, thank you for having me.
But that
Always
I
helped
clear
love,
my
love,
mind
love
up
the
a lot
haircut.
because there's something like
Thank you.
very
I
like
tell my mom
meditative
that.
about the whole process
Yeah,
of just
tell us you did a
walking
very good job.
aimlessly in some ways, but then at the same time
Bye.
just like, you know,
Bye.
breathing
See
and
you.
like getting some fresh
Thank you,
air. I
everyone.
think that was really important. These days with the snow, it's a little bit tougher. So I have gone to terms with just locking myself in the bathroom for the extra 5 minutes.
That's where you get your 5 minutes. You know, it's also beautiful. Something that you said is walking around aimlessly. So I remember, you know, when I've been working in corporate for such a long time, and everything has so much structure to corporate, right? And when I quit, I remember telling myself I was not going to structure my day. I'm just going to let the mind be aimless and let it unwind a little bit. And literally, you know, it becomes the most creative when you kind of just let it unwind and be aimless. It's so amazing that you've said that, because kids do things aimlessly, but we kind of have gotten into like aim for everything. So it's a huge reminder and nugget, at least to me, and I'm hoping everybody else, that it's okay sometimes to just be aimless. You know, in the long run, it'll actually work out better if you can just let the mind unwind a little bit.
No, definitely. And there's a beauty to it, right? Like where you don't feel like you have to oblige to anything but yourself and how you're feeling at that moment. Like if you're hungry, you just eat something. Or if you want to walk, you just walk a little bit more. If you're tired, sit down for a second. Like there's a lot of freedom to it, rather than being bound to a schedule.
So I'm going to ask you a controversial question. You know, Sheryl Sandberg has been all about lean in. You lean into every aspect of your life, and you can be the super mom, and you can be whatever you want to be and everything you want to be. What's your point of view on that?
I think it goes back to like what it means of having it all, right? Like I think for each person it's very different, and recognizing and like thinking about what that means to you is essential to how you feel at the end of the day. And it's constantly shifting and evolving. And to me right now, it's like, it doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean the traditional sense of perfection where you have a spotless home, you're constantly smiling when your kids are wreaking havoc, or you're like always patient with like your spouse who, you know, wants something and you want something, you know, that I think it's all about acknowledging who you are, how you feel at that moment, and constantly trying to fill your cup in different ways. And really looking at, you know, being kind to yourself, instead of like thinking like you have to be able to do it all at that very given time and place. And just being thankful for being able to be happy and like present and healthy, and know that your kids are going to grow up really fast soon. So, you know, if they're screaming at that moment, it'll be okay in like maybe 30 minutes. And at the blink of an eye, they'll probably go to college.
So enjoy every moment. But I love what you said. It's potentially maybe leaning into kindness to yourself, leaning into patience for yourself and others. You know, a lot of times we think of achievement as the area we lean into, and not the other ones that will potentially, to your point, fill our cups up a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think achievement is very different, right? Like when it comes to children versus a job. And I think that's something that I'm constantly learning. Like at a job, you are given a raise or a promotion or something, but with children, it's very different. Like the kind of things you get from them. It's really like a smile. It's not things that you can technically like, you know, list out completely. It's just the feeling of it at that very moment. And I think for me, that fills my cup.
It's beautiful. So I'm also going to ask the audience if there are any questions. They can type it in for Christina, and she can take some questions. In the meanwhile, Christina, do you feel like there have been aspects in your career that you've had to let go of a little bit, or take a little bit of a back foot because of the situation? It's of course a choice that you've made, but you've had to kind of pull back a little bit.
No, definitely. I think I struggled with this a lot in the very beginning when starting my own company of like, what kind of work do I want to do, right? Like figuring that part out because I'm so used to doing like large hotels that are of a certain caliber brand. And then doing your own thing, of course, is a struggle of like not having that same support or like same access to those sort of projects.
Yeah.
But also knowing that, you know, those kind of projects require a certain type of like dedication. And so for me, like, I definitely felt like I was scaling back in terms of like the type of work I was doing and the achievements I would be getting. So instead of like winning an award for a big project, it's more about like, hey, I accomplished A to Z at this kind of capacity today versus like something that was different and more shiny before.
Right.
So that I think has and was a struggle, especially in the beginning. But now I feel more comfortable with it because through design, like I'm able to like touch on people's lives in a smaller scale and more intimate scale, which I love to do. And I didn't realize that before of like that change. But I feel like I'm constantly evolving and like just figuring out like what that means in terms of for my business.
That's great.
And what satisfies me. Yeah.
So what satisfies you now?
I think being able to have time with my kids, that's a big factor that I really, really love. And despite COVID and everything, like I'm so thankful that I have that time and they're stuck at home with me for the most part, because that's what I really wanted is more time with them. And being able to like do projects that I had more autonomy over in terms of design, that has given me a lot of joy. Even if they're smaller projects, I really love that. Like I do a lot more residential now, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Challenging
also
in different
challenging
ways.
though, right? Because
Yeah,
your
very
clients are far more picky about everything.
Yes, it is true. Especially when it's your own money, you're worried, right? Which is totally understandable. But what's joyful about it is that I'm designing with the lens of being like a parent and being someone who works really hard. So I understand like the different aspects of their lives in a different way versus as a hotel when you're designing for maybe what 100 people would like versus like a specific type. So it's been a lot more intimate as a process, and I've loved that a lot.
Amazing. So I have another question, right? There's been a lot of talk about, you know, we talked about how gender roles might have, you know, come to an equilibrium. But what COVID has brought to the fore is not so much. What has your experience been? And I know Sukhan's been an amazingly supporting dad and husband, but do you feel like it's still the woman who has to take on more of the family, home, caretaking role? And, you know, any thoughts and advice for people who are still struggling with that?
I think like a lot of people fall into that mindset that the women take care of the household and the children just because we're more maternal biologically, and in some ways I agree with that just because like my role and my personality is very different from Sukhan's personality. So in our household it kind of made sense more of, but I definitely think that the modern world doesn't really lend itself for a woman to just be that. And the expectations make it feel like you can't just be that and be happy. And I think that's the challenge with a lot of women. How I'm navigating through that is thinking about success in a different way, and not feeling like, you know, I can't ask for help in other ways in terms of like taking care of the household things. Because at the end of the day, it's a partnership, right? Like it's not that because I'm a woman, I have to do these things. Like he can do it too, and he's willing to do it, but he wouldn't know to do it unless I said, hey, like I need help, or can you take on this responsibility?
And half the times they don't even notice the things, Christina, that we might, right? Like I'm like, it's so obvious. You just have to pick it up and put it inside the fridge, otherwise it'll get bad. But it doesn't. I think the wiring might be a little bit different.
Yeah, it is definitely different. But I know a lot of people who struggle with that a lot, especially when you're working full time at a different job that's really vigorous. Like it's really, really tough. When it's not your own business, it's really, really hard.
No, I completely understand. So one other question that I have, if there are any questions, we'll take it, but I don't see anything as yet. So a lot of times, right, and you talked about this, as women, we want to do things our way, or we think we have a way of doing it. But especially with children, right, when you ask for help, be it your mom or a nanny or a daycare, How do you also let go? Because they might, if Aaron's throwing a tantrum, they might deal with him differently from what you might do and what you might want. Where is the give and take over there?
That's a very good question. I think really hard. You can try and set boundaries ahead of time and let them know what you want in place. My previous nanny actually fed my son McDonald's, which is like a big no-no in my household. But it took a conversation just to tell her, like, hey, like, don't do that. But I wouldn't have known that that was a possibility of something happening otherwise. So I think like setting boundaries, expectations, and also like curbing your own expectations too, and being okay with it if something like that happens, and not freak out about it. And know that everything, can be resolved at the end of the day.
It's beautiful. That's very well said. So lots of great nuggets, Christina, that you've shared. That, like, I think even me, not being a parent, takeaway, right? This letting go of perfection, of exactly what's meant to being kind to ourselves, living in the moment. And I think I love this thing of aimlessly just walking around. And the big one is the courage to ask for help. So I think a lot of amazing, amazing nuggets. And also realize for those of us who are parents, you're not alone. I think a lot of people are struggling to kind of find the balance, find time for themselves. So just know that, if you can just reach out to somebody else, you will realize it's not your unique situation. And, there might be tips and other people who might be willing to help.
Yeah, I definitely have moms on the hotline call to ask, like, hey, I just need 5 minutes to talk. Am I crazy? Or like, what should I do? And they always tell you, like, it's okay. Be kind to yourself. That's the advice that I keep getting. So
it's amazing.
I want to share that with everyone, that it'll be okay. You're doing your best.
So yes, I think somebody's asking what's the topic, parenting. The topic is not just parenting. It's the topic is working moms. Can you have it all? Can you have your amazing, ambitious career and be an amazing mom and have a perfect house and everything else? And it's seeming like something you might have to just figure out what it all is for you and what you want to give and what you want to take. So amazing. Thank you so much, Christina, for helping us through maybe navigate two really big adulting challenges. One is a career and second is parenting. And when you put them both together, it becomes another challenge altogether. Thank you so much. It was so much fun having this conversation.
No, thank you for having me. Always
I love the haircut.
Thank you. I tell my mom that.
Yeah, tell her she did a very good job. Bye.
Bye.
See you. Thank you, everyone.